I never thought the person who would ruin my life would be the same person I once called my sister. Not my fiancé, not my father. Her. For almost 15 years, Ava was my best friend. The kind of friend who knew every secret. The kind of friend who had a key to my apartment. The kind of friend who spent holidays with my family because her own family was barely around. When my mother died, Ava was there. When I graduated college, Ava was there. When I got engaged to Daniel, Ava was standing beside me crying happy tears. Or at least that's what I thought. Looking back now, I wonder if those tears meant something else entirely. Maybe guilt. Maybe jealousy. Maybe satisfaction. Because while I was planning a wedding, Ava was quietly planning something else. And by the time I discovered the truth, the damage was already done. The story starts 3 years ago. Ava lost her job. She was struggling financially. Her landlord was threatening eviction. She had nowhere to go. So I did what any best friend would do. I helped. I convinced my fiancé Daniel that Ava should stay in our guest room temporarily. He wasn't thrilled about it. But he agreed, just for a few weeks, he said. Those few weeks became 3 months, then 6. Then nearly a year. During that time, I paid for groceries. I paid for utilities. I even helped her with job applications. Whenever she cried, I comforted her. Whenever she felt hopeless, I encouraged her. I genuinely wanted her to succeed. I never once imagined she was repaying my kindness by betraying me. The first warning sign appeared during a family barbecue. My father had recently retired. He was lonely after my mother's death and spent a lot of time around family. That afternoon, I noticed something strange. Ava and my father seemed unusually close, laughing together, sharing private jokes, having conversations that stopped whenever I approached. I told myself I was imagining things. After all, Ava was like family, and my father was in his 60s. The thought seemed ridiculous, so I ignored it. Big mistake. A few months later, Daniel started acting differently, protective of his phone. Late-night text messages, excuses that didn't make sense. I confronted him several times. Each time he convinced me I was being paranoid, and because I trusted him, I believed him. Until one night, the night everything collapsed. I came home early from a business trip. I wasn't supposed to return until the next morning. My flight got moved. I thought I'd surprise Daniel. Instead, I received the surprise. The apartment was empty, but something felt off. Then I heard voices coming from the guest room. A room Ava technically wasn't even using anymore. I opened the door, and in a single second, my entire future shattered. There was Daniel, and there was Ava, the two people I trusted most in the world. Neither one even looked surprised. That hurt more than anything. Like they'd become comfortable with the deception. Like they assumed they'd never get caught. Daniel started apologizing. Ava started crying. I remember standing there completely numb. No screaming. No dramatic scene. No throwing things. Just silence. A silence so cold it terrified them. Then I said 4 words. Get out of my house. Ava tried to explain. I didn't listen. Daniel tried to justify himself. I didn't care. Within 24 hours, both of them were gone. The wedding was canceled. My relationship was over. My best friendship was dead. I thought that was the worst betrayal imaginable. I was wrong. 3 months later, my cousin called me. She sounded nervous. She asked if I was sitting down. Then she told me something that made my blood run cold. Apparently, Ava had been spending a lot of time with my father. Not occasionally. Constantly. People were talking. People had seen them together. People assumed they were dating. I laughed. Actually laughed. Because the idea sounded absurd. Then my cousin sent photos. Photos don't lie. There they were. Holding hands. Walking together. Acting like a couple. I stared at those images for almost an hour. Unable to process what I was seeing. My former best friend. My father. The same woman who had already destroyed my engagement. The same woman I had welcomed into my home. The same woman I treated like a sister. And somehow the betrayal had gotten worse. When I confronted my father, he didn't deny it. In fact, he defended it. He said he loved her. Loved her. The word nearly made me sick. I asked him if he understood what she had done to me. He said people make mistakes. I asked if he understood she had slept with my fiancé. He said the past should stay in the past. At that moment, something inside me broke. Not my heart, my respect. The father I admired no longer existed. The man standing in front of me was a stranger. For the next year, I cut both of them out of my life. No calls, no visits, nothing. Friends and relatives pressured me constantly. Forgive them. They're still family. Life is too short. Nobody seemed concerned that my life had been turned upside down. Everyone just wanted the drama to disappear. But karma has a strange sense of timing, because eventually Ava's true nature caught up with her. The same way it always does. The woman who betrayed me began betraying everyone else too. And when her world finally started collapsing, guess who she came running back to for help? Me, the very person she had spent years destroying. The message arrived on a rainy Tuesday evening. Her name appeared on my phone for the first time in almost 2 years, and what she wrote made me laugh harder than I ever had before. The message arrived on a rainy Tuesday evening. I hadn't heard from Ava in nearly 2 years, not after she destroyed my engagement, not after she inserted herself into my family, not after she started dating my father. Yet there her name was, on my phone. For a moment, I considered deleting the message without reading it. Curiosity won. Big mistake. The message began exactly how you'd expect. Hey, stranger. As if we were old friends catching up. As if she hadn't detonated my entire life. Then came the real reason she was reaching out. She needed help. Of course she did. People like Ava never contact you when things are going well. They only remember you exist when their life starts falling apart. Apparently, my father had recently cut her off financially. That caught my attention immediately. Because for the previous 2 years, Ava had been living a surprisingly comfortable lifestyle despite barely holding down a job. Luxury vacations, designer handbags, expensive dinners, a new SUV. Social media was full of photos showing a life most people could only dream about. Everyone assumed she had finally found success. The truth was far less impressive. My father was paying for everything. Everything. The car, the apartment, the vacations, the shopping sprees, even her monthly bills. I didn't know whether to feel angry or embarrassed. This was the same woman who once claimed she hated depending on others. Yet somehow she'd turned my grieving father into her personal ATM. The message continued. She claimed my father had become controlling. She claimed he was emotionally unstable. She claimed she was the victim. I almost laughed because those were the exact same things she'd said about Daniel after their relationship ended. Apparently, everyone became toxic the moment they stopped giving her what she wanted. I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked the number. Again, I assumed that would be the end of it. It wasn't. A month later, my aunt called, and what she told me nearly made me drop my phone. The family was in chaos. Apparently, Ava had been telling different stories to different relatives. To some people, she claimed my father promised to marry her. To others, she claimed she owned part of his property. To a few relatives, she even implied she had legal rights to certain family assets. Nobody knew what was true anymore. Relationships were being damaged, and my father was at the center of it all. The situation finally exploded during my grandmother's birthday gathering. Ava wasn't invited. She showed up anyway. That's when everything unraveled. At first, she acted like nothing was wrong, smiling, hugging relatives, pretending she belonged there. Then someone asked a simple question. A question nobody expected would trigger a disaster. How's the wedding planning going? Silence, complete silence. Because apparently Ava had been telling people she was engaged to my father. The problem? My father had never proposed. Not once. Several relatives immediately started comparing stories, and suddenly the contradictions became impossible to ignore. One cousin mentioned Ava claiming she'd been promised a house. Another relative mentioned Ava talking about inheritance. Someone else brought up money she'd supposedly borrowed. The lies started colliding with each other in real time, like watching a house collapse from the inside. Then came the moment nobody saw coming. One of my uncles pulled out receipts, literally, printed bank records, loan agreements, text messages, screenshots. Months earlier, he'd lent Ava money after she claimed my father was refusing to support her. But according to other messages, my father had already given her thousands during that same period. The room became very quiet. Ava's face changed instantly. She knew, everyone knew, the stories didn't match. And once people start questioning a liar, everything else begins falling apart too. Questions started flying. Where did the money go? Why were there different versions of the same story? Why had she asked multiple relatives for financial help? Why had she told different people completely different things? She couldn't keep up. The lies were too many. The contradictions too obvious. For the first time, people stopped seeing Ava as a victim. They started seeing her as a manipulator. And she hated it. She stormed out before dessert. But the damage was done. The family began comparing notes. More stories emerged. More inconsistencies surfaced. More people realized they'd been manipulated. Over the next few weeks, an ugly truth emerged. Ava had been running the same playbook on almost everyone, borrowing money, creating sympathy, exaggerating problems, playing people against each other, collecting favors, and moving on when questions started appearing. The worst part? My father finally started paying attention. For years, he'd defended her, excused her behavior, protected her reputation. Now, even he couldn't ignore the evidence. One evening, he called me. The first meaningful conversation we'd had in years. His voice sounded older, smaller somehow, like someone carrying a weight they couldn't put down. He didn't start with excuses. He didn't defend himself. He simply said, "You were right." 3 words. That's all. But they carried 2 years of regret. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. There was no satisfaction in hearing my father admit he'd been manipulated. Only sadness. Because despite everything, he was still my father. And underneath the anger, I knew he had been lonely. Loneliness makes people vulnerable. Ava had simply exploited it. Over the following months, things got worse for her. Friends disappeared. Relatives stopped answering calls. Financial support dried up. The luxury lifestyle vanished almost overnight. Without other people's money, she couldn't maintain the image she'd built. Then came the public embarrassment. The same social media account that once showcased expensive vacations suddenly went silent. People noticed. Questions started spreading. Rumors followed. And eventually the truth reached everyone. Not because I exposed her. Not because my father exposed her. Because her own actions exposed her. The lies became too large to hide. The truth eventually catches up. It always does. Around that same time, my own life began improving. I received a promotion at work, moved into a new home, started traveling, made new friends, built a life that had nothing to do with betrayal. Nothing to do with revenge, nothing to do with Ava. One afternoon, while having coffee with a friend, I realized something surprising. I hadn't thought about Ava in weeks. Not days, weeks. That realization hit harder than any revenge ever could. Because true healing isn't watching someone suffer. It's reaching a point where their existence no longer controls your emotions. A few months later, I saw Ava one last time. Completely by accident. We crossed paths in a grocery store. For a brief moment, our eyes met. She looked away first. Not me. Her. And suddenly I understood something. For years, I'd believed she'd taken everything from me. My fiancé. My friendship. My family. My peace. But standing there, I realized she hadn't taken those things. She had revealed who deserved to stay and who didn't. The people who betrayed me made their choice. The people who remained proved their loyalty. And the life I built afterward was stronger because of it. I walked past her without saying a word. No insults. No confrontation. No revenge speech. Nothing. Just silence. The kind of silence that comes from finally being free. Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's moving forward so completely that the people who hurt you become nothing more than a chapter in a story you've already finished reading. And that was the last time I ever saw Ava. As for my father, we're rebuilding. Slowly. As for Daniel, I heard he's on his 3rd failed relationship. As for me, I got my peace back. And in the end, that turned out to be worth far more than revenge.